Welcome back to the channel, everybody. We review anything and everything. And today we are going to get into reviewing Lego. Now, this is simply a me just freestyling in terms of building a city. I'm going to just go into all the things that I went into building this. And this is going to be a very long video because there's going to be a lot of rambling on in regards to just a fun activity that I had started years back. So if anything, you could just say that this is just kind of me having fun in this video. But I'm going to put the link in the description for Lego architecture sets, because that is what inspired me to first get into building this. And just a kind of brief, quick understanding of what how I got started. Pretty much this was many years back, well over, I want to say maybe 13 years ago, when they first started coming out with the Lego architecture sets. And I remember seeing the Empire State Building set, and then I remember also seeing the New York City set where you had the I think it was the Empire State Building, it was the World Trade, the One World Trade, it was the Chrysler Building, it was I want to say the Iron Building. I forget what the name of it is called right now, but that building that's like a triangle shape. In terms of its overhead shape is like a triangle. And then why am I having a brain fart with the Statue of Liberty? And I remember thinking to myself, I think the set was like over $50 or something like that. I remember thinking to myself, that is very expensive for just a little small set. And I'm like, if I had some free bricks, I could build my own, little New York City type of setup. And then, obviously any other kind of thing I wanted to add to the setup. And so I did just that. I went to a Lego store, I bought some free bricks, and I decided to just put together my own little city. Don't mind any other stuff in the background. I am at my kitchen table right now. So the only place I could display this, and I have some extra lights, so don't mind if you end up seeing that in the background as well. But essentially, that is what got me inspired to build this. So what I'm going to do is, in this rant, go over pretty much all of the buildings here and what inspired me to set things up in this way. And don't mind, I don't have a mic on the camera right now because I know that I'm going to be mobile with my camera and putting it down. So I apologize if the sound is not as good as it is normally. So first, jumping into how did I decide to go about building everything? Well, in terms of what created the order or structure or, function of how I got into things. Well, I went off the basis of, I went to Wikipedia and I looked up New York City's tallest buildings. And then from there, I pretty much built from the sky down. So in order of the tallest building, I went downwards. First, I actually didn't create the tallest building. The first building I created was the Empire State Building because it's just my favorite building. And so I wanted to have that. And this one was actually changed recently. Actually, I did a mock build a couple of years ago, knowing I needed to change it from the way I originally had it. And I'll explain that in a moment. But going back to how I started off, so like I said, first I built that building, and then from there I said, okay, well, now I had a list of all the tallest buildings in the city. At the time, actually, I'm sorry, let me backtrack that statement I just made. The Empire State Building was the tallest building in New York City at that time. The World Trade Centers, the two World Trade Centers were, but at that point in time, we didn't have the new one, and the old ones were fallen. So for that reason, it was actually the tallest building. So my favorite building in the world became the tallest building again, obviously, but not for positive reasons, but it became the tallest building once again. And the World Trade Center I actually put the old ones in it regardless, even though it wasn't no longer a standing building. When I had built this in around 2000 and maybe 2009, we'll just say somewhere in that ballpark range. Make sure I don't knock any of these buildings over. I put those into the build because I wanted them to be there. I just thought that the building seemed amazing, just the structure, the architecture of them. So I decided I want to have them in there, even though on the list of tallest buildings in New York City, it was no longer on that list. And here you could see also I have the new One World Trade Center. So in these positions, since that building would not take up these spots in terms of where it stands, what's now here is just big holes in the ground that have water. I believe it's water filled into their spots, like little fountains, not, you know, active fountains, but just big pools of water standing in the place of these. So it's not like that would be taking the space of these. But as far as the architecture and what I decided as far as building everything up, I went off the basis of the Empire State Building was the first one that I set the tone to with its height. Now the Empire State Building, and all of these, I actually wrote down all of the height of all the buildings and whatnot. I'm going to just show you right here, just written down. This is the list of all the buildings from tallest to shortest. And that little part in the right-hand corner is some little things that I want to actually fix, or at least go over to see if I might have to do some repairs. But essentially, well, not repairs, but changes. But essentially, starting with the Empire State Building, now you have two measurements on all or most of the buildings, and that is the either architecture or roof height, and then you also have the spire or antenna height. Now the Empire State Building is a height of 1,250 feet tall, and you can see it there. Now its antenna or spire height is 1,454 feet tall. And I'm going to come back to these numbers in a little bit because I'm going to go from the tallest one and come down in terms of size and height. But with that being said, I use that as the basis to say, well, if that's the height of that, then everything else, don't mind the background of my kitchen area, everything else was going to be off the basis of that height. So essentially, the Empire State Building had to be smaller than obviously the World Trade, which at the time I didn't have the One World Trade. Those are the remnants of my old Empire State Building, which I'm going to get into in a moment in terms of something that I changed on it. But so I then had to make sure that this was taller than it, than the Empire State Building. So I did so. And then from that point on, I used the basis of making sure that nothing was taller than, well, not nothing was taller, that everything fit in accordance with that baseline that was made with the Empire State Building being my first building. So whatever was shorter than it had to be shorter than it, but it had to be shorter than it based on the height of the architecture height, which I believe for the Empire State Building, I'd have to look it up. I don't remember. At the time I did, I think the architecture height was here. And then you had the spire. No, I think the architecture height was down here. And then this was all part of the spire. So this would be measured at 1,250 feet. 1,250 feet high. So everything had to go in accordance to that. So for example, the old 2 World Trade Center building, which is the shorter one, is this one. I didn't make their heights any different because the difference in the heights between both buildings was just about 6 feet. So it was negligible in terms of difference. But this right here is supposed to be 1,362. So that I made a little bit taller than what this point is, which is 1,250. But then the spire of the Empire State Building going up to 1,454 is higher than the height of this roof. Now, I apologize that I don't want to get too low in the angles because I don't want to showcase my entire kitchen right now. I don't have a great spot to kind of put this, and I wasn't going to go outside. But essentially, you could see kind of here, if I can get that angle, that the Empire State Building's spire goes higher than the World Trade, but the base, where I pointed out to you before, which is like right here, is shorter than it. So it gives that, you know, keeping in that reference and in that measurement, you know, aligned. So I made sure I'm a big stickler about scale. I love the idea of things being in scale. It just it's very fascinating to me. So with that, I made sure to keep everything in line, and essentially creating every single building based on looking it up in Wikipedia, reading about the height, reading about the you know, where the roof is, or architectural height versus the spire height, versus comparing it to the other buildings. Then I would go to Google Maps and Google Earth and get a image of where it laid inside, you know, next to, in terms of the geographics of other buildings, where in New York City was it. Then would come doing a full 360 view of the building, around, you know, just the whole structure, how it looked, certain other aspects of the building, not just the tip, because most of the time you can only see in Google Maps the kind of the upper part. You can't see the bottom part near the street level. So sometimes you get the 3D view, then I have to look up pictures too. With all that being said, in an actual build process, from the moment me researching it from Wikipedia, knowing which building I'm going to build, down to the Google Maps, the Google Earth, the photos, and then comparing it to other buildings, it generally would take me about 40 minutes per building to build, not including the fillers of, you know, just some other smaller buildings around, but each tall skyscraper. So that was generally the process for that. And I'm gonna just now run through the buildings and going from the tallest to the smallest. Before I do that, I just want to quickly mention something with the Empire State Building, what I recently changed. And that is, so this base here used to be the base for the Empire State Building, and it used to fit, it's about, remove that one row here and remove a row here on this side, and it was cutting off a row on each end, and it was fine and it fit in place, and I didn't have these side pieces too, so this was flat and flush to it, and it still looked nice. But then one day I came back to it and I said, I was looking at pictures of the one for the Lego one, and I was like, then I looked up some images online. I was like, it has these side pieces extending out. So just to make it a little more accurate, I recently today, I made the build over a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, of the improved one, but I didn't get to put it in place until just today. So I took this original base and the other structure. I had two Empire State Buildings and I just switched them out. So I just wanted to make note of that. But so let's go on this journey of my Lego New York City and go into details on some of these buildings. So first we have the One World Trade Center, the old one, and that is this one right here. And that one is a height of 1,368 feet at the base, and the spire is 1,728 feet. Now, the New World Trade Center, which is actually bigger than it, but I just kind of listed them next to each other because for the most part, their base is the same height at 1,368 feet. So this one's base is considered the same height. And I guess you could say roughly around here is the base of that. And then the spire of the new One World Trade Center brings up to 1,792, which is actually a bit taller, but not by much. Maybe roughly you could round it off about 60 feet taller than the spire of the old World Trade Center. So, and you can kind of see that a little bit there. But yes, now, little note, I pretty much did all this off of the main, as you can see, type of brick color was just black, because I wasn't going to go all over the place and get crazy with things. So the base colors were black, and unless a particular building required to stand out with specific color, whether it's glass, whether it's gray, whatever the case is, then I would do that. But for the most part, all the building colors were going to be just the same color of black, because it just made it more affordable and just easier to kind of go off that. And in addition to that, I tried to make everything off of just basic bricks that were not specialized bricks, unless I needed a specialized brick to be used for particular certain things. So we'll get into that in a few with the buildings that required that. Now, the One World Trade Center, the new one, is a very hard building to realistically build without having some kind of unique, things in New York. I'm sorry, tongue twister. Unique, blocks and unique building methods. So I really, just kind of went off of just what I could with what I had, the material I had, without any kind of complicated, overly special types. And essentially, that's what I came up with, the best that I could come up with at the time. Now, I do try to make note about particular things within the architecture, like how the bottom here is a different type of material. I forget exactly what it is now, but it is definitely a different type of material, different color up to that point with like a stronger foundation. And then as it goes up, it's a different type of material, or at least different color. And yeah, it's supposed to be depicted where anyone who knows the One World Trade Center, the new one, has like an aspect of it where it's, I really don't know how to phrase it, but it's almost like it twists, and it's almost like where it would really come to a sharp point going this way, and then all of a sudden it would look like you took, I don't even know how to describe it, to be honest with you. So what I'm going to do is just kind of show you a picture real quick on here. That is how it looks there. So you kind of see it looks like it's almost inverted from the top, where it's like you took a square edge at the top, a more square edge at the bottom, you align them slightly off setting, like almost like you twisted it like a Rubik's Cube, and you mushed them together. So yes, so that was the best I could do with that. It may not seem like it, as far as looking super accurate, but it was the best I can do with that. But at least the height is accurate to the rest of the things inside the rest of the structures in the build. Next, we have obviously the 2 World Trade Center, which I mentioned before is 1,362, roughly the same height as the first original one at the base. So there's no point in really, I wasn't going to make them any different. I tried to make, if I'm not mistaken, if I can remember correctly, but my memory is a little off because it's been a long time, that I think I did like about one full size like brick, like something like that, a regular height brick, I think was like about 50 feet maybe, or something to that effect generally. So yeah. So next we had 7 World Trade Center. The old one was 610 feet. Now this is not in the order of height. This one building, all the rest of them on my list are in relation to height. And that is it right there. But the thing about it is that because I just kind of grouped in my listing the World Trade ones next to each other, that's why I did that. But the old one was 610 feet. The new one is 745. I'm going to quickly take a glance real quick on the Wikipedia page, so bear with me 1 second. And I can tell you which one it is that I have there. And so let's see, 745, 60 Wall Street, no. 7 World Trade. So that is, the new one is 745 feet. I don't know why I have 743 on the Wikipedia page, so something's wrong there. I don't know if it maybe wasn't done when I was building it up and that's what it was supposed to be. But I'm not really too sure. But Unless, I don't know. But I'm not too sure the one that I actually have on there, to be honest with you. I think that is the new one though, because when I'm looking at a picture here, to me, it looks like the new one. And that is the new one there. So I believe that is that one at 743 feet. I have listed as 745 feet. Negligible is just 2 feet, but that, I don't know why I had it like that unless it was changed. But I know I took my measurements straight from Wikipedia. So next we have the Empire State Building, as I mentioned before, 1,250 feet at the top and 1,454 feet at the spire. So there you go with that. My favorite building, and I have the lights, and anyone who's used to being in New York City will know that they have little lights that shine at the top, so I just put a couple of those for the lights. Now, the next building is 432 Park Avenue. So let me see. That is going to be 1,396. Forgive me on that. It's been so long. I used to remember what every building was right off the back. And now, since I haven't kind of messed with this in a long time, some of the buildings escape me in terms of which ones are which. But this building is this one right here. And what's interesting about it is its actual top. This one's like right next to Central Park, and if you were to look at it on a map, like I said, 432 Park Avenue, if you looked at it on a map, that's where it would be, roughly around that area of Central Park. And obviously that's Central Park, if you didn't know. And the little things here are trees, and these are actually where the water areas are. So I don't think there's any more than that, but there's a water spot at the edge here. There's a big one there, and then there's another one there. I think there's a couple of smaller ones, but these were the ones that are actually noticeable, so I tried to keep that in line. But once again, this 432 Park Avenue is 1,396 feet tall, and it is actually bigger than the Empire State Building on its base. But the Empire State Building, let me see. Nope, they have the Empire State Building listed as being shorter than it because they go off of its, some things will measure off of the spire while other things don't. I never really kind of understood that as I was doing my whole research and everything like that, but it's very interesting when it came to that and understanding how that worked. But yes, so that's considered taller than the Empire State Building. Though in my list, I didn't do it that way because I incorporated the Empire State Building based off its spire. But if you look on Wikipedia, it's not based off that. So it's considered shorter. So there's a couple more buildings that I haven't got a chance to build yet. So I don't have them inside my list. Some of the newer ones that I eventually plan to get to. So the next in my list is the Bank of America Tower, which is 945 feet. Let me see. Bank of America Tower. That is this one. Now that one was very challenging to build. It was the best that I could do it. It's got a crazy weird shape, and so it was the best that I could do it like that. One side is more higher up, and the other side comes lower. It's almost like I wouldn't really know what to describe it like, but you can look it up. I'm not going to go back and forth every single time on the Wikipedia, but essentially, this is 945 feet tall, and at the spire is 1,200 feet tall. So its spire height is near the height of the Empire State Building's base, but just a little bit shorter than it by about 50 feet, which is the equivalent, like I said, roughly about one brick difference. So this one, the top of its spire, is about shorter by one brick height than this one's top base right there. So that was cool. It's just a very tall building, and it definitely stands out in the mix. Next, we have the Chrysler Building at 925 feet, and the spire is 1,046 feet. Now I'm gonna jump into a quick story, and then I'll come back to my list in a moment. This is the Chrysler Building right here, and I hope that that you guys think it came out pretty good, because I like the way it came out. It's obviously a lot shorter than the Empire State Building because it is, but a lot of that is spire height of what brings it up to its height. Now, quick little story when I was doing this process and something that I just found to be super interesting, and that is the 40 Wall Street building. Let me see if I can find that on the list real quick so I can remember exactly how that looked, because like I said, I forgot some of the way that some of these ones look, and I don't want to I'm not going to at this moment pause the video because I'm just going to run through, and this is going to be a really long video, although I may end up having to break it up into 2 parts. So if I'm not mistaken, in my layout, the 40 Wall Street building is for me is this one. I don't love the way that it is because it's supposed to be more pointy at the top, but it was like the best that I could do at the time. Maybe I will change that later on. But it was really like the best that I was able to kind of get at that time because I didn't want it to be too thin of a spire like. So if I could find a better kind of cone setup, I didn't want it to be too spire like, because there were other buildings that had like this that are really more pronounced to be that kind of cone shape like that. So that was kind of really the best I was able to get away with, even though it is a little more narrow and pointy at the tip. You know, if there was a way to like extend a little bit more of a thin tip right there, that would be perfect. But so the story with that building is this. I just thought it was very interesting. I'm going to scroll back here to the Chrysler so you can kind of see both of them a little bit. And essentially what happened was, hold on, as I tell my story, I'm going to go just like that. And so what happened is this. Yes, it's raining in our city right now. The 40 Wall Street building and the Chrysler building were both being built at the same time, with a couple of other buildings as well that were going through that time phase of building. But those two buildings were really competing with each other for dominance of the skies. I think it was around 1929 that they were in this kind of rat race to be the biggest building, and so in New York City. And so 40 Wall Street guys realized the architectural plan of the Chrysler building, and they said, you know what, the Chrysler building is going to be 925 feet. And so they said, we're going to build ours 2 feet taller at 927 feet. As the two were going at it, and the Chrysler building realized that the 40 Wall Street building was going to be 2 feet taller than them, they were like, we can't have that happen. But we don't want to let them know that we're going to try to be taller than them, because then they'll just try to maybe be taller than us. So at the last minute, what they started doing is they got the approval to start building a spire, but they did it inside of the Chrysler building. They got it in pieces, parts that they built it together inside the Chrysler building, so no one would know that it's being built. And at the last minute, after the 40 Wall Street building was done and it was finished at its height of 927 feet, then the Chrysler building at 925 feet then added its spire to the top, which made it 1,046 feet. And then at that point, it was higher than the 40 Wall Street building. And for that year's time, or roughly within that year of that they were at their completion, they argued and battled, as the 40 Wall Street building would say, a spire is not considered the tallest part of your architecture, and that doesn't count. While, the Chrysler building was saying, yes, it does count. And shortly after that, that whole battle was put to rest, because the Empire State Building was finished and it just towered over them in both aspects, whether it's by architecture or spire, either one. The very highest point of the Chrysler building was still shorter than the architectural height of the Empire State Building. So I just thought that was a very interesting story. So next we have the New York Times building. And if I'm not mistaken, that is going to be, I think that's this one right here. No, it's not. It's that one here. Interesting. Let me confirm something. Okay, so going down my list, I realized something that in my list that I wrote up, there was a building that was out of order in height, and so I'm gonna address that one now, because then and I'll come back to it later when I'm coming down the list because I know I'm gonna hit it. But so this building right here, which is next to I think this was the Bank of America Tower. And then you have the Chrysler build. Well, I'm sorry, you can't even see my finger. This was the Bank of America Tower. This building right here is the 4 Times Square building at 809 feet tall at its base architecture, top of its architecture, which is not super tall, but the spire at 1,118 feet put it even higher than the Chrysler building in terms of its spire. So as you could see how I did it here, the architecture of the Chrysler building is actually taller than it, but the spire is taller on that, and that is what brings it up to point. So little things like that I had to make sure to, make sure that they were correct as well, that the spire sometimes puts something over while its base height was not. And so that building is one of those buildings that's kind of really cheating because the spire really brings it up a lot further up than where it would be otherwise. The next building that I had on the list, that one was actually further down the list, but I just want to make note of it because it is a taller building than the next one I'm about to say. The next one I'm about to say is the New York Times building, which is 748 feet, which doesn't seem all that tall. That's this one here at its base, but its spire height is 1,046. So it has the same spire height as the Chrysler building. So these two, I made them the exact same height at the spire, but in terms of the height of the architecture, the New York Times building is a lot smaller. So that was a detail that had to be put into play there. But it came out very nice. If you go, also too, as I'm going through this list, if you want, pause the video, go take a look at, some of these structures, and you'll see how they compare to the way that I built them up. And I hope that you find them to be, interesting. Definitely check out that one too, the 4 Times Square building, because it really does look like this, the way I did it. So, it's very interesting, and I had fun building that one. So next we have, matter of fact, what we're going to do now is I am going to stop the video, and then we're going to continue on a part 2, because this video is super long, and just stay tuned for that.